Hey everyone, and welcome. So today we're going to do something pretty cool. We're cracking open a 200-year-old Hindu scripture called the Shikshapatri. And you might think, 200 years old, what's that got to do with me? Well, you'd be surprised. This ancient code of conduct, it actually speaks directly to some of the biggest ethical questions we're facing today. So yeah, let's explore how it does that.
So, to get us started, let's just think about this question for a second. It's really the heart of this whole thing. Is true discipline about the rules you follow, or is it about how you follow them? Because, as we're about to see, this scripture, it's not really about just blindly obeying a list of do's and don'ts.
Nope.
It's way more interested in the why, the intention, and the awareness that's behind everything you do.
And that actually leads us perfectly into our first big idea here, this call to vigilance. See, before the text even lays out a single rule, it wants to make sure we're in the right headspace. It's all about getting the why down before you even start worrying about the what.
So check this out. The scripture basically lays out this really stark choice. On one side, you've got pramad. Think of it as just going through the motions, that neglectful, half-hearted stuff you do just because you feel obligated. But then on the other side, there's apramad, and that's the complete opposite. It's vigilant, it's heartfelt, you're all in. And the text is super clear about the stakes here. One path is described as leading to spiritual death, while the other leads to immortality. We're literally talking about the difference between the nature of a demon and the nature of a god. It's that serious.
I love this next part. The source commentary uses this brilliant analogy. It calls it a pick and mix. Like a candy store? The point is, this ethical code, this Shikshapatri, it isn't some kind of spiritual buffet where you can just pick and choose the commandments you like and leave the rest. The commentary says, well, I'm afraid all are necessary. To really get it, you have to commit to the whole thing, not just the easy or convenient parts. It really is an all-or-nothing kind of deal.
Okay, so we've got this mindset of vigilance, of being all in, but how does that actually translate into action? Well, everything, and I mean everything, is built on this one core principle, this cornerstone, the great law of Ahimsa. It's described as the very root of Hindu dharma, which you can think of as the right way to live, that eternal, righteous path.
So, what exactly is Ahimsa? Well, at its core, it's the principle of nonviolence or non-injury. But here's the thing. The text makes it clear this isn't just some friendly suggestion. It's framed as the absolute foundation of what it means to be human. This is the core teaching from the great enlightened saints, the rishis. And get this, the scope of this compassion is just staggering. Seriously, we're not just talking about being nice to other people or, being kind to your pets. The scripture is incredibly explicit about this. Ahimsa applies to all living creatures, from whales to birds and fish, to humans, of course, but also down to insects, lice, bugs, even fleas. It's this all-encompassing, totally uncompromising circle of compassion.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. The text makes it clear that this principle of nonviolence is absolute. So absolute, in fact, that it overrides other religious traditions. Even rituals, these yagnas that involve animal sacrifice, they are strictly forbidden. The text basically says the idea that a creator would be happy about you destroying its own creation is, well, it calls it ludicrous. It just makes no sense.
And to really hammer this point home, the scriptures give this incredibly vivid, almost chilling warning. It says, "Behold, O king, the thousands of jeeves, that souls, which have met their death at your hands, wait eagerly for your death in order to reap their revenge upon you." Wow, what a powerful image, right? It just goes to show the severe spiritual consequences that are attached to this kind of violence.
All right, so we've talked about the animal kingdom, but how does this great law of Ahimsa apply specifically to humanity, to other people, and even to ourselves?
Well, when it comes to homicide, the scripture is crystal clear. It explicitly forbids killing for what it calls the three great drivers of human conflict: to acquire women, to acquire wealth, and to acquire political power. Think about that. How strikingly relevant is that today? It's basically the motivation behind everything from corporate greed to full-blown wars. The message here is powerful, and it's all about restraint.
And then the code introduces this really fascinating concept, swahimsa, which means violence towards yourself. The act of suicide is strictly prohibited, and the logic is that the principle of nonviolence, it also applies to you. Your life is sacred. Your body is seen as this precious vehicle, the only one you've got to achieve spiritual salvation.
And here's the why behind that rule. The text says human life is the only means to the heavens. If we waste this life, we will have to wait an awful long time before getting another chance. Basically, this life is seen as this incredibly rare, precious gift, an opportunity for spiritual growth. And to cut that short is to throw away that chance, potentially getting stuck in endless cycles of birth and death.
Okay, so we've talked about these big, grand ideas. But how does this principle of nonviolence actually show up in our day-to-day lives? Well, let's bring Ahimsa right out of the abstract and put it where we make choices every single day, on our plate. Let's talk about the ethics of eating.
Now this is a really, really powerful concept. The scripture argues that the sin of killing an animal, it doesn't just fall on the person who does the act. Nope. The responsibility, the sin, is shared equally by everyone involved in the process. The person who offers it, cuts it, sells it, buys it, cooks it, brings it, and finally eats it. In this view, every single person in that chain is considered a slayer. That's a heavy thought.
And to show that this isn't just some isolated religious idea, the commentary points out something fascinating. It connects this principle to some of the greatest minds in Western history. People like Pythagoras, Socrates, Da Vinci, Newton, and even Einstein. They all at some point concluded that they just couldn't ethically condone the eating of animals. So it really bridges this ancient Eastern scripture with modern Western thought, suggesting maybe there's a universal truth here.
But it's not just about ethics. The text makes this surprisingly modern environmental argument too. I mean, just look at these numbers. To produce 1 pound of wheat, you need about 60 pounds of water. Okay, but to produce 1 pound of meat, you're looking at anywhere from 2,500 to a staggering 6,000 pounds of water. It's presented as just a massive, massive waste of our precious natural resources.
All right, let's get to our final, practical application of Ahimsa, because this principle of non-harm, it's not just about our physical bodies or the bodies of others. It also extends to our minds. This is all about avoiding substances that cloud our judgment and harm our consciousness.
And the scripture's position on this is totally unambiguous. The consumption of alcohol is called a mahapapa, which literally means a great sin. There is zero gray area on this one. It's flat out considered the food and drink of demons and something that's completely unsuitable for anyone who is seeking a pure life.
And again, the commentary backs this ancient rule up with arguments that honestly sound like they could be pulled from a modern medical journal. It talks about all the health risks, damage to your liver, your brain, your stomach. It points out the mood changes because alcohol is a depressant, which can lead to anxiety and paranoia. It talks about poor judgment, how it affects your memory and coordination, leading to accidents. And maybe most importantly, it highlights the devastating impact it can have on families, the financial problems, the arguments, the violence.
So if you're supposed to avoid all that, what's the alternative? Well, the text offers a really beautiful and powerful one. It says we must learn to leave these addictions and become addicted to bhakti, which is this state of pure, heartfelt devotion. It's a call to redirect all that energy. Instead of chasing temporary pleasure in things that cause harm, find a real, lasting happiness in a spiritual connection.
So after all of this, we're left with one big question, right? We've looked at this code that's all about vigilant intention, absolute nonviolence, and really mindful consumption. So the question for us is, in our incredibly complex modern world, how can these principles from 200 years ago actually challenge the choices that you and I make every single day?